Opening a coffee shop looks simple on paper. Rent a corner space, buy a good machine, hire a friendly barista, and sell $5 lattes all day. A cup like that costs under $1 in beans and milk, which suggests margins above 80%. That's the dream most first-time owners chase. It's also why more than half of independent cafes shut down within 5 years, and nearly 40% never reach their first anniversary. If coffee has such fat margins, where does the money go? Walk into a packed cafe and it looks like a gold mine. Full tables, a line out the door, steam rising off the espresso machine. But the person behind the counter is often the owner, working 70-hour weeks because there's no money left to hire more help. Many owners take home less than their own employees. It's rarely the coffee's fault. New owners obsess over the drink, the shot, the beans, the milk texture, when that's almost never what determines survival. Part 1. The real cost of a latte. Break down that $5 cup. Ingredients: coffee, milk, syrup, cup, lid under $1. Labor, wages, taxes, benefits about $1.75, 35% of the sale. Rent and occupancy costs, roughly 75 cents, sometimes 10 to 20% of total revenue depending on the neighborhood. Card processing fees, around 15 cents per sale. One small shop reportedly paid over $18,000 a year in fees, more than it spent on beans. Utilities, software, licensing, about 40 cents. Waste, bad shots, expired milk 15 cents. Taxes, another 25 cents. What's left is around 65 cents of actual profit, about 13%, not the 80% the ingredient cost implied. Part 2. Why more customers doesn't mean more profit. In most businesses, higher volume improves margins. Coffee shops don't work that way because they aren't really selling drinks. They're renting out roughly 90 minutes of intense morning demand. Nearly all daily revenue comes from that window. Serving more people during the rush means buying extra machines, $10,000 to $30,000 each, and hiring more staff. But that staff and equipment don't vanish once the rush ends. The machine sits idle until tomorrow. Employees scheduled for full shifts are still on the clock at 2 p.m. when the cafe is empty. Labor cost per drink can jump from under $1.50 during the rush to over $4 in the slow afternoon. A cafe can look packed every morning and still lose money every month. Part 3. The customers who actually matter. The commuter grabbing a quick coffee is barely worth the transaction fee. The real value comes from regulars who visit 10 to 15 times a month, order specialty drinks, and add a pastry, spending 20 to 30% more per visit. A loyal customer might generate $200 plus a month versus roughly $100 for an occasional commuter for the same number of visits. This is why menus are designed carefully. A $7 specialty drink at the top of the board makes the $5 latte look reasonable, nudging people toward upgrades without a word from the barista. A pastry costing 55 cents to make and selling for $4.50 often has better margins than the coffee itself, but baking in-house requires ovens, proofers, and overnight staff. Buying wholesale keeps margins around 50 to 60% while avoiding that overhead. Adding hot food is riskier still. A commercial exhaust hood alone can cost $10,000 to $50,000, and a grease trap can run up to $40,000. Part 4. Location decides almost everything. Two identical cafes can perform completely differently based on which side of the street they're on. Foot traffic near transit or offices brings in customers at almost no marketing cost. Corner spots often cost 50% more in rent, but capture traffic from two directions. Commercial leases usually go beyond base rent. Triple net leases add property taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Busy corridors often include a percentage rent clause. Once sales cross a set threshold, the landlord takes a cut, often 5 to 8% of everything earned above it. A lease with an artificially low threshold can mean paying that extra percentage long before the business is actually profitable. These leases typically run 5 to 10 years with a personal guarantee, meaning the debt follows the owner if the business fails. For suburban spots, easy parking often matters more than walkability. A few seconds of hesitation at a bad turn is enough to send a commuter elsewhere. Part 5. The real startup cost. Most owners budget for furniture and equipment and stop there. A small kiosk can cost around $80,000 to open. A full sit-down cafe often runs $400,000 to $500,000. Equipment alone can be $20,000 to $80,000, and plumbing/electrical build-out can add $20,000 to $150,000. Add furniture, signage, licensing, and 3 to 6 months of working capital, and costs climb fast. Permits and inspections can take 2 to 6 months, meaning owners often pay full rent on an empty space before ever opening. Running out of cash before opening day, not a lack of customers afterward, is one of the most common causes of failure. Part 6. When everything breaks at once. A dead espresso pump, a sick barista, a failed fridge compressor, and a delayed cup delivery can all hit the same week. None are rare individually, but together they're brutal. Losing the main machine during a morning rush alone can cost $500 to $1,500 in a single day and send regulars to a competitor. Emergency repairs often cost $100 to $150 an hour on weekdays and up to $225 on weekends. Customers who get turned away don't always come back. Part 7. Why independents can't outscale chains. Starbucks buys about 3% of the world's green coffee supply, giving it negotiating power no independent can match. Chains run their own roasting and distribution, achieving 75 to 85% gross margins versus 60 to 70% for independents, and can let one location lose money for years while others cover it. Independents compete instead by selling something chains can't replicate, a specific place made by specific people. This is the logic behind specialty. Third wave coffee customers who once balked at $2 coffee now pay $7 to $9 for a well-made pour-over, even though the bean cost barely changed. That pricing power also insulates small roasters from commodity market swings, since customers compare the cup to their last great one, not to a futures chart. Part 8. The payroll clock never stops. Baristas are paid for cleaning, restocking, and opening/closing, not just for serving customers. A slow day from rain or a delayed train still costs full wages. Training a new hire takes real investment that's lost if they leave months later. In some states, minimum wage laws stacked on top of tips can push labor costs from a third of revenue to 40%. Part 9. Why experienced owners keep opening more cafes. The cafe itself was never meant to be the whole business. It's the storefront that proves the brand works while real profit comes from elsewhere. Wholesale beans to other cafes and stores, subscription bean shipments, and retail bags sold at the counter. A $16 bag costing $9 to produce nets $7 profit, roughly the same as 4 lattes, with no barista labor required. Part 10. 2 versions of the same cafe. Take a cafe doing $500,000 a year in sales. Optimized version, fair lease terms, tight staff scheduling, wholesale pastries, strong loyalty program, added wholesale/subscription revenue 15 to 18% net margin, or $75,000 to $90,000 a year for the owner. Realistic version. An unnoticed percentage rent clause, 2 rounds of costly staff turnover, a summer fridge failure, a quietly raised card processing rate 5 to 8% net margin, or $25,000 to $40,000 a year, less than some employees make for 70-hour weeks. The roughly $50,000 gap between those outcomes is usually decided before opening day by the lease signed, the equipment bought, and the staffing plan built long before the first cup is poured. The coffee was never really the product. The real business was the real estate, the labor model, and the decisions made months earlier.